America, you can be voting for your own death warrant and you don't know. Okay. The presidency is a head. It is run by a parliament and a Congress who makes the decisions and uphold the policies that have been enslaving those same people for the last 20 years. Those people remain intact. It's the same thing in Haiti. Those men that they showed you who resumed power are the same security generals of the same armed forces that have been killing and upholding that same regime for the last 30 years.
Are we rolling there?
You with me?
Yeah, I understand that.
That is what is occurring in those two countries right now. But you have to understand a little bit, as I said, about those countries, their economics, their politics, and a little bit of their history to fully appreciate the point I'm making right now. Without that, you won't be able to put it together, put the pieces together.
I know a history about them, both countries. You see, the whole structure of governance, this whole setup is very similar to that.
Where?
Not in the Philippines, but in Haiti. They had the not that similar, but parliament. They have parliament. They have
Haiti
Congress.
don't have a parliament. There is no democratic institutions in Haiti.
Well, that's why
it's a total dictatorship structure. Those people are appointed. They are not elected officials. They were hand-picked appointment by the family, as they call it, the first family. They were hand-picked, appointed. I appoint you to be my security officer. I appoint you to be my this. I appoint you. That's the way Haiti is structured.
So that's how someone picks a cabinet.
You see?
At the door. Do not disturb. Metro Media 5 taping.
Are you rolling?
Yes. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're having a discussion now with four brothers from...
Because of what's this?
Fine. Take two. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're having a discussion. Take three. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're having a discussion now with four brothers, actually three, and myself making the fourth brother from Los Angeles City College. And we're discussing the ramifications of coming to this country from another country and the relationships that these brothers have initiated and sustained with African Americans here in the United States. I have a number of questions here, and we're going to open up the floor for discussion in regard to the relationship between Africans from around the world and African Americans. These gentlemen at the table here, as you've probably seen earlier, are from various parts of the world. Brother Akbar here is from the country of Belize in Central America. Brother Moraki is from Azania, or as they call South Africa. And Brother Orlon Bishop is from Guyana in South America. I, Theodore McClendon, I'm from Hammond, Indiana. But without any further ado, let's get going on the discussion, gentlemen. What was your first impression of African Americans when you came to America? What were some of the feelings that you had when you actually encountered brothers from this country?
Yeah, well, my first experience, since my life rotated among the younger generation of Black Americans, I kind of see them as more carefree or relaxed.
Carefree?
Carefree. That which I experienced back in my own country, that's how the younger people were. And until I understood the dynamics of the relationship between the Afro-Americans within the American society, then I with the realization that they were behind in some of their what they should have achieved within this society. Their social class, so as to say, wasn't as stabilized as the other people within the society, the other groups. And that's what I experienced, that's what I saw.
Yes. Any other comments on that?
Well, basically say, for me personally, I found the experience to be totally shocking. And for at least first 2.5 years of my experience in America, I say it took me at least that much to actually digest the whole thing psychologically and emotionally, in understanding it from a historical perspective and of course from the current perspective. By that I mean that, see, I guess I have to explain from before I came to this country, I had a highly positive perspective of the African American, due to the fact that the impression that was given to us through the media and tourists and particularly the movies that we saw of African Americans in South Africa created such an impression that I remember to a certain point in my life I always used to think or imagine that in America there was a black president, you know.
Yes.
So that you would envision a free black man. I guess coming from South Africa,
Yes.
I always was forced to have to look at it from that perspective. Seeing a black man that is free on the screen, that rides a long car with big cigars, dresses all kinds of suits, you know,
Could you
goes
give
and
any
travels
specific
anywhere.
Could you give any specific example of that type of movie that you've seen
Uh,
that really gave you an illusion of something other than what actually is here?
yeah. I saw, for example, Shot with Isaac Hayes.
Yes.
I
Richard
think it
Brown.
was Isaac Hayes or Richard
He
Brown.
did the
But
music.
he did the music
Richard
too,
Roundtree
right.
was the
Richard
star.
Roundtree, that's right. Shot, and I remember I saw Mahogany,
Yes.
Diana Ross, and a whole lot of movies that I can't quite recall the titles, and you know things like Car Wash,
Yes.
you know. And at that time, when as it is today, we didn't have television. Black people in South Africa did not have access to television, so that we were not exposed to television series like Jeffersons and the rest.
Yes.
You know? So I'm speaking primarily from movies and documentaries and things like that. So that my coming to America, on my way to America, I had these big, great ambitions, you know, of living in a free world and experiencing life with free black people. I mean, free both mentally, culturally, economically, and the whole spectrum. So that when I landed at JFK, October the 2nd, 1980, I went through a psychological shock that automatically changed my life in seconds, because I was so excited, and you know, I had such electricity in my whole system. I couldn't just wait to set my foot, you know.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, so that when I get off at the airport, the first thing that occurred, first experience I had was seeing JFK, a bunch of black people laying on the floor. You know,
Vagrants?
Yeah, these are people that didn't have homes.
Yes.
You know, drunks, and you know, something that I never thought and never even had a moment of my life to make room for in
Yes.
my brains. You know, and right there and then, I knew that I had to, you know, change and adjust my mind. And from there on, you know, I
So reality set in the moment you stepped on the shores.
Yes. Yeah. And in fact, I remember at the time, you know, we had some wine, you know, me and my friend. We
Yes.
couldn't wait to land, you know, we had some wine and was looking forward to it. And I was looking right at that particular moment. something kept telling me, take your bags and go back on the plane and go home. And that's how hard and complicated it was for
Yes.
me to see. Of course, it was not only black people there. Puerto Ricans, whites, some whites, but the majority of the people were black. And then walking around Harlem,
Yes.
just the very first day,
Yes.
was enough to blow my brains apart.
I understand.
Of course, as things went on, as days and months come through, my attitude began to change as I began to study and analyze the whole situation politically, historically, and otherwise. And of course, living with various people from the African family tree.
Yes. This leads me to another question in regard to your encounter at the airport, and this is for either of you gentlemen. What is your feeling about the general standard of living of most African Americans in the United States? What is your feeling of their standard of living? I'm sure you've already seen that there is a vast difference, almost an apartheid-like difference between where most blacks dwell and the habitats of other nationalities, namely whites. Does anyone have any viewpoints on that, or have you noticed it, or?
I would like to first give a quick analysis of what my perception was of the United States, and in particularly the black Afro-American. I was fortunate to have been educated in Belize by people who have been in the United States, studied in the United States, was here during the 60s, and who evolved within that experience. Those were my teachers in Belize. So I was fortunate. I said I was fortunate because Lieber just gave us an example of coming here with a distortion. So I understand, I had some understanding of the struggle in America, both positive and negative. So when I came here, I was not totally surprised at some of the things I saw, because I already had an understanding of certain social problems in the United States.
Yes, so it wasn't a total shock to you?
No, I already knew where the strength, to a certain degree, of the black community was, and where the weaknesses were. So I was not totally amazed or surprised. To relate to the question you posed on the social condition, the living conditions, and so on. Yes, there is a distinct subculture, if you may call it that exists in the United States between the black community and the white community. And that is very evident when you go to places like Harlem, as he mentioned, or here in Los Angeles, where you go to Watts, and then you go to East LA, and then you go to Beverly Hills and Bel Air. Those are distinct communities. Yes, they are in the same city limits,
Yes.
but they are distinct police protection. They are distinct crime levels. I see more liquor stores in the black community that I don't see in Bel Air or in Beverly Hills. So yes, there are distinctions there, and I have some serious questions on those.
Yes. Do you have a comment on that? Anyone else have a comment on
Yeah,
the...
I like to say, in terms of meeting the living condition, we know that Afro-American is at a disadvantage, a majority of them. And for the main reason that they are only able to meet the survival level, that's food, maybe clothing, shelter. But to get out of that, it's very hard. So that's another setback for them.
You're saying the average African American is more concerned of survival as opposed to some of the higher qualities of humanity, some of the higher pursuits.
Yeah, and in addition to that point, I think it's important to note that that is only, see, when one becomes a victim of circumstances, you are forced to make decisions that are quite, contrary to what you as a human being would like. In my opinion, I think that the situation for the African American here, in comparison to other people of African descent throughout the world, so to speak, or particularly to my country, South Africa, I guess it's easier for me to talk about it because I can see similarities, politically, socially, and otherwise, between the African American and the Africans in South Africa, right? So that I think that in comparison to the overall political, social, and economical structure of America, the living conditions and the social conditions of the African American are totally intolerable and horrible. Because by that I mean that, okay, it's understandable that the political structure has been able to establish so-called middle class in the African American community, which are in reality the minorities. You know, I would say, in my observation, only 3 out of 10 people from the black community will succeed in becoming a so-called middle class. You know?
Right. Although I might add here that the middle class is growing immensely. There's an incredible middle class in America of black.
As growing as it is, I think though there is a danger in that it is more, in reality, it is an illusion than it is a political or economical reality in terms of growth. The reason why I say that is because the whole thing of development and growth and success is based not on the human self-consciousness type of thing. You know, it is a thing that is developed. The foundation of it is the foundation of assimilating from one thing to another. So that if you are considered successful or comfortable as a black man in America, you are not yourself. You know, by that I mean the assimilating process is forcing African Americans to reject themselves as, first of all, Africans, and then as black people.
You're saying that the successful African American generally becomes Europeanized.
Yeah.
I would like to put something into that, and that is this. This word we use, successful. What is
success?
What do we describe as being successful in America, specifically for the black man?
For black people.
Yes.
I have questioned that.
Very good question.
I have questioned that in my own mind, because you point out through the news media, the entertainment media, etc. What is this level of success? Is a Diana Ross a symbol of success for the black community? How many Diana Ross are there? It can be an illusion, because how many Diana Ross there will be?
Yes, generally, that level of success is viewed as rare even among educated and those who are not educated, blacks as well. But the level of success that we're discussing here at the moment is the level where you can own a home, maybe a couple of cars, raise a family, send them to college. Income-wise, we're talking from between $25,000 to $50,000 a year. The higher pinnacles of monetary success, we really don't take too much into account, at least not an educated black man who realizes that the odds are strongly against the superstardom type success.
Okay, what I find dangerous about that is this, that the black community, and this is not a general statement because not all of the black, or not all sector of the black community is moving in this direction, but by and large, is it trying to assimilate rather than a collective upbringing of a community development? It's evident that when a black man gets a certain job, a certain salary, what's the first thing he does? He moves out his black community.
That's precisely what I'm saying.
Yes.
He moves out
Assimilation.
his black community. Physically moved out. Right?
physically, mentally.
Because his
and
vision
otherwise.
is to get in a community. And what is that community? We all know that. That community is going and moving into a white neighborhood. That's most of the time what it is, moving into a white neighborhood.
Many times, to address what you're saying, many times that is a symbol for African Americans. That is a symbol of success. To be able to be in company with
I
white.
find that personally, I find that very dangerous.
Yes,
I don't
to
think
be sure.
at one point it's really to be in company of white people, but it's to have a security, to have the security in the life that you need, a stabilized family, a stabilized home life, and with that people tend to remove themselves from danger or corruption.
So you're saying the African American, let's cite an example, perhaps an accountant, one who's gone to 4 years of school, maybe a couple years of graduate school, well-educated black man who's grown up in the ghetto or on the outskirts of a ghetto. Finally, when his school years are over, he's going into a firm, let's say a big law firm. He's an accountant at a law firm, and he's pulling in $35,000 a year to start. He's got a wife, maybe 2 kids. You're saying that it's not that he wants to be, that his goal in life is to be in the company of white people. It's just that, incidentally, the area that whites live in offers him that security,
Yes.
that safety. I understand.
Well, I would take a very different point of view on that point. In fact, I would want to disagree with that on the basis that I think, first of all, it depends on the level of consciousness that person
of course,
has. Because I think that is the basic fundamental difference that brings about this exodus from the black community. Of course, naturally, as human beings, everybody wants to be in a comfortable environment, a safe environment, a physically, environment where you can function as a human being without any threats or hate or fear.
Yes.
Okay, that is acceptable. That is natural for any human being.
Yes.
However, what I'm talking about when I say when I cite the dangers of the kind of success or so-called success that we see or that I see is the fact that there is a physical development that occurs within the black community. That is, you get a job, you get a car, you get all that, but there lacks a mental development.
Yes.
That should be the first stage of development and success. You understand? So what I'm saying is, until and unless you have a particular kind of consciousness about yourself and a well-developed level of mentality, you are able to see yourself and your people as a whole and see where you are. And the minute you look at things that way, you are able to think whether or not you have money. You are able to think immediately that instead of me moving from Watts to Beverly Hills, with what I've achieved, with what I've worked for so hard, I can come together with other people within my community. You see, within my community, and put my monies together or other resources together and develop the community for the betterment of our people. Right?
Yes. Noble indeed. Let me make one statement briefly on directly relating to the subject that you just brought up. Community development. This is what many of your successful, newly successful black individuals will tell you. Community development takes larger portions, larger sums of money, in the millions, perhaps even the billions, to begin a community. These people are just people who are making incomes of, say, $35,000. It's enough to make themselves comfortable. But for any widespread development, their hands are pretty much tied. Now, in regard to consciousness, they could increase their consciousness, enlighten themselves, broaden their scope to realize themselves in the big picture of being an African. However, the impact, especially the economic impact that an accountant that makes $35,000 can make, monetarily his impact would be small. He feels helpless. Many of them will relate that to you.
Again, I have some reservations on that.
Okay,
Because,
let me add this point here.
This brother had a comment coming
Yeah,
up.
Go ahead. Yeah.
we looking at the structure of the black community is a very complicated and complex structure, and to break that down and to change the view of the people is very difficult. One person cannot do it. 100 people cannot. We have to start work in different levels, working with children, working with adolescents, working with the elders, with at each end of the community to come in with one force and to make a direct swap, clean it out, and finish it. That we don't have the resources to do that.
The entire spectrum.
We don't have the resources to do that.
I totally disagree with what you just said, totally. Based on this, we must first question the institutions that design the way we think, behave, and act. We do not run our own school system. The church community have been with the black man throughout the experience of slavery and up to date. What have it done in opening that man's mind? We have to start ask questions like that concerning the churches in our community. This is not anti-religion, but start questioning the churches in our community. We should also ask ourselves about our educational system. What are we being educated about? To get a doctorate degree, to get a master's degree, to get a bachelor's degree? We should start questioning that.
Yes,
And-
brother.
And I would like to add this point, that change begins with the individual. It begins with the individual, and then it spreads from there. Change begins with the individual first.
But that change must have a catalyst. Something must enlighten this person to let know or let her know that they must change. That element is not within the black community. In form of enlightening them, it's not in the schools, it certainly is not in the church. So we now think in terms of developing the black community, let that element be there. That catalyst to start to enlighten them. And that's what we need. We don't have that resource.
Which brings us to this point, in my opinion, with relation to what you said and what the brother here said with regards to how much money would take to bring a particular kind of change, or how many individuals it would take. But I tend to take a different point of view of that. But before I say that, let me say also that I do understand the historical significance of this, so that it is not because of the black man himself that these conditions are existing. There has been a historical pattern designed by the established institution to enslave not only physically but psychologically and emotionally the African American and the black community. Which brings me to the point that I believe that it does not take a certain amount of money or more than 1,000 people to develop a community, or as a matter of fact a family. I come from a Soweto. Soweto is a predominantly black township in South Africa, highly overpopulated, and the circumstances and the living conditions there are worse than the so-called ghettos in the black community. However, there's a significant difference in terms of development of the people, and culture plays an important role in that difference. And that is one thing we have to recognize. Of course, the African American's culture was ripped off of him. He's totally went through the whole process of being dehumanized, which of course is a contribution to the whole situation today. So that I want to say that the fundamental foundation for change will have to come from the consciousness of the people. Not necessarily how much money they have in the bank, how many people have what or what. It has to come, the masses have to be, the consciousness of the masses has to be redirected.
What can redirect this new consciousness? What would be the catalyst for this enlightenment of a mass of people?
Establishment of educational institutions that bring about a different perspective.
Yes,
And
brother.
we go right back to the point I would take money, resources. One, we need qualified people. Qualified in terms of history, the African American history.
You have those people. There are those people
How
in the
many?
black community.
How many?
And then if you come, if
We,
you want
we,
to,
we talking about flushing out the whole system, getting rid of the whole structure that's dominating right now. If we're talking about one school or two schools, well then we have the people.
well, let me say this again to you. There are already schools and institutions established of that sort. Okay, there are independent African American schools that I know. We have Malcolm X's, the Omowale schools, you know.
Marcus
So
Garvey School.
my point is, resources is not a problem, but the people is the problem. Because once you have people focused to a particular direction, consciously, mentally, emotionally, and otherwise, you can have and make resources. You have enormous amounts of money that goes out from the black community to serve other communities. You have entertainers, black entertainers, who have enormous amounts of money, who, if they were consciously aware of the situation at large, would take those resources and build, in addition to what is already existing in the black community, build institutions and bring about these resources that I'm talking about. So we do have resources. What we don't have is a mental collaboration to bring about
when I
that.
say resources, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about people resources, ideas, constructive development. That's resources I'm talking about. I'm talking about the entertainers included, their resources. If they use the media properly, they can put out their ideas to the people. Those are the resources. I'm not talking about money. There are billions within the black community. But that resource needs to be tapped and lead into the right direction.
In other words, the resources should be channeled.
Yeah.
The resources do exist, but they should be channeled
Of course.
into the proper directions, the proper disciplines. You made a statement, and this leads me to another one of my questions, in regard to the African American musician and athlete with virtually unlimited resources. It's not unusual to have, for an individual to be making upwards of $1 million per year. For some individuals who are fortunate enough to do Las Vegas, $1 million a week, or at least a month. Now, with these kind of people in our midst, and with these kind of people being our African brothers and sisters, what can be done to allow them to focus on this community building, focus on the fact that there are other talented and gifted African Americans and Africans in general who could utilize their resources and put them to constructive purposes? And in fact, if profit motive were these people's aim, they could even enjoy or share in the profits of our own talents and resources. What do you think can be the catalyst to awaken these brothers and sisters, since there's such a vast difference in resources among our people? We have the poorest in society, and we have the wealthiest in society. What will bridge that gap, gentlemen?
Again, I would like to go back to the original statement of community development.
Okay, brother, let's get specific since we met this point here. I think our viewers would really like to get to the meat of this point, because this is an important point. Community development, fine, my brother. What can Magic Johnson, what can Abdul-Jabbar, Diana Ross, Maurice White, Cameo, these groups, these entertainers, these athletes, Walter Payton, to name a very few, what can these people do to build a better community? What can be done, my brother? Let him address this, please.
There can be attempts to reach these people and to form alliances. I think that effort should not be exhaust in that direction, because most of these people, in my own observation, have no intention of coming down from their status or so-called status to deal with the problems we are talking about. You may get a few. So what I suggest, and there are many dynamic leaders in the community that have been promoting this, and this comes back to what you just said, that we should be dealing with specifics, and that's community development. When I use the word community development, I am talking about across the board. It includes your culture, it includes your economics, it includes your spiritual, your domestic. So when we start categorizing this without any kind of platform to build community consciousness, we're not heading anywhere. Because if you are successful in building a record company in this structure, it is most likely that if your people are not educated enough to support the product of that structure, you won't survive. So we cannot get away from community development. And that was all the point I was trying to make.
But what are some of the steps to this community development? If we can easily throw this word around, community development. Okay, what next? What are the beginnings of community development? What can one of these, what can not necessarily a wealthy entertainer or a wealthy athlete, but what can a large black corporation do to help in the community? What can we get specifics on what can be done? Just using the word community development isn't sufficient for we on the panel here, nor our viewers. And I'm not just relating this to you, my brother. This is for anybody on the table here. We have to be specific when we say community development. I'm sure everybody in our viewing audience agrees. We need community development.
Let me try and explain this. We have had several black institutions, business institutions. We have had Motown. We have had, what's the company called that produces the Ebony magazine and all those companies?
Johnson Publishing.
What have they done for the black community? We have a black magazine that shows what? Do we go through the content? We have had artists coming out of the Motown record company singing what? What kind of lyrics? What kind of messages?
Which leads me to my next question, yes, about the lyrical content.
I'd like to answer the same question, though, when you finish.
Certainly.
Before you go to your next
Continue, brother, I'm sorry.
So what I'm saying is, brother, that for those established institutions that are there, we can try and work with those institutions for specific purposes. My only position on that is this, that many of those institutions are trying to assimilate into that white status quo that is already existing, rather than trying to cater to an overall development of its own people. So I find it very difficult to walk into Motown, pardon me, and to try and restructure that company, right? I see us starting our own company, and that goes back again to understanding what we are all about as an individual, and then forming an alliance from there. And that is not easy. But again, I have to stress the willingness and the struggle to get there.
Okay, if I may, this might sound very unusual, but coming from a situation like South Africa, where I've seen certain things happen, not because a particular politician or people who care want that kind of thing to happen, but because there's a radical change from within the people. I happen to believe that in order to solve a problem, you don't start from the top, but you start from the root of the problem, the foundation of the problem. My basic understanding is there are two problems to it. In terms of the foundation of the problem, is to establish white institutions. They are designed to keep black people where they are. It's a fact. And secondly, the destruction of the black person as a human being, physically, mentally, and otherwise. So that if you want me to give you a solution or an answer as to what can be done, I give you 3 solutions. Burn all the record shops, and burn all the liquor stores, and shut down the churches.
Then we would just
Okay?
overpopulate
Now,
the jails.
this is a revolution. I mean, in my opinion, this is just my opinion. It calls for a radical revolutionary change within the black community. Naturally, this will mean confronting the established forces. You have the president bringing the National Guard to the black community. But I'm saying, as far as I'm concerned, if you want a significant change, you have to be honest with yourself and confront the issue as it is. And that is confronting the established capitalist system. Okay? The reason why I say that is because, first of all, the mental destruction of the black community comes from the insane, uneducated, and insulting lyrics that you get from our own artists. That, in my opinion, contributes to the dehumanization mentally of black people.
You're saying song lyrics.
Yes, songs, I love you, baby, and all that. That's number one. I think that's one aspect of our lives in the black community that should be dealt with, okay? And the only way you deal with it is by confronting the issue. Stop supporting these artists, and by stop doing that, not only are they going to make up their mind, they are white, because these artists are also slaves by themselves. They don't own nothing, okay? So and the majority of people who buy records are black people. So that if we control that part of our community, we'll see a significant change. Not only from the black artists themselves or the successful athletics, but from the established system by itself. Once we take control of that, there's going to be change. I
Yes.
guarantee you. Secondly, the liquor stores. They play a major devastating role in the destruction of the black community, whether we like it or not. We're going to have to deal with that specifically. Okay? And lastly, of course, we have to re-establish particular cultural institutions and support those that are already established, that encourage cultural awareness of the African himself. Okay?
Yes.
Those are the 3 fundamental things I think need to be done.
And they are significant. Those points you make are very significant and indeed noble to some degree. My only disagreement is in the methods. If we begin to burn record shops and burn record companies and et cetera, we will just overpopulate the jails because they will be waiting for the brother. That kind of response is the expected response. They will lie and wait. They will lie and wait for that kind of a response.
It'll be just chaos within the community. We don't destroy our community, we build it.
Right.
We cannot have more burned down homes, buildings within the community. We need to get rid of those that are already burned.
I understand what you brothers fundamentally
do.
I understand what you say.
We challenge the direct source of the problem.
Okay, we're going to take a break now. We will pursue this discussion. We must take a break.
Where's the coffee, President?
We're back. Now, we were just discussing about the probable or possible solutions for the lack of consciousness in the black community and the pressure that black people get exerted upon them from whites and other non-black members of society. These brothers were more or less talking about some solutions that they see. I understand that was your short-term solution to burn record stores and record companies and do really drastic activity.
Well, removal in any way necessary. The removal of them in any way necessary.
Yes, yeah. Well,
Right.
I think
So that's a short-term solution, so could you go in detail?
Let me say this also. I sincerely believe that, and I think there needs to be some radical change that has to happen, both consciously and physically. And of course, indeed, I see that as a short-term solution leading towards a particular, a second step. a second step which I think should be established, however, consciously, before we go to the first step, that is that of radical change. My second step will be implementing a significant network. I think African Americans have a substantial capability to establish a significant and concrete network of people of African descent throughout the world. I think that there has to be a well-established alliance of economic, cultural, and social networking between African Americans and other people. I think so far, people of African descent are totally isolated from each other. And for that reason, there seems to be a unfortunate misunderstanding amongst us as a people. And that comes from not understanding the fact that we are all victimized by the same oppressor and the same systems. As unique as our environmental circumstances might be, the cause of the problems that we all face are due to the same source, you know. So that I think what will ultimately liberate the African American is first of all himself and his people throughout the world. You know, I think that will be a significant step in terms of bringing about
so you're saying the world view of the African American
has to change and has to develop with a different perspective. Yes. Yes.
What suggestions do you have on once we get a more positive musical, lyrical content and more positive business participation, how do you see blacks then relating to whites in this country, knowing that whites still are the majority?
The same way that other blacks relate to whites in another country. What I meant to say by that is, once we as a people begin to know who we are in America as Africans, because that's one thing we can't deny, we are Africans, okay? Once that begins to happen, we'll begin to have an international understanding that we are not unique, or that we are not better or worse than our other brothers and sisters throughout the world. Once that begins to happen, we will develop not only a physical network, but a conscious network. In other words, you don't have to be in Africa to be an African, or to work for Africa, or to work for Africans. You don't have to be in Guyana to develop Guyana, you know. You don't have to be in Belize, you don't have to be in Jamaica, you know. Because once you have the conscious awareness, you begin to politically relate, economically relate, and culturally relate to your people at your immediate environment.
That is what's missing now.
That is what is significant, and that is what is missing, especially and particularly to the African American himself. Okay? Of course, there is a historical explanation to that. That is why the oppressor never wanted the slaves to know how to read and write. That's why the oppressors always put, you know, it's very interesting, something I used to think about, and I still do think about, that in Africa, particularly South Africa, we were always given the idea that African Americans didn't care nothing about Africans, didn't want to have anything to do with Africans, you know. And it was quite shocking to me to come here and find that it was instilled in the African Americans' mind that Africans have nothing or want to have nothing to do with Africans in Africa. You know, that is, black people don't want, you know.
A common misconception.
Right, so that once we begin to understand all these psychological trips and tricks played by our oppressor, we'll begin to understand, you know, that there is no need for all this commotion, you know. And of course, we have to go back and correct the historical distortions that were created by these people, Europeans in general, okay? So that, however, will happen once we all individually determine for ourselves who we are. In other words, once I, in South Africa, know who I am, where I am, what I'm doing, where I'm headed, and once you do the same in your particular environment, it will be a matter of seconds before we can, bring about a significant collaboration and therefore bring about progress.
So you're saying, and like many of our viewers are probably aware, divide and conquer has been our main enemy.
Yeah.
The implementation of the divide and conquer theory.
And not only divide in the sense of particular groups of Africans or Afro-Americans, but divide in terms of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
They teach one group one thing, teach another group another thing. And that's set them apart, hold them apart.
To create rivalries among our people.
In South Africa, they call it tribalism, so-called tribalism. You hear constantly in the news, oh, the Zulus in Zululand have gone across to harass the Sotus. Nonsense. My father is a Motswana, my mother is a Xhosa, my grandfather is a Zulu, my grandmother is a... So all these so-called tribalistic things are the same techniques used long time ago to divide and conquer. And they still use that today, and unfortunately they're still successful.
Unfortunately, that is the truth, yes. We see that a lot now, especially among the wealthy of our people. We see where they don't even relate to one another.
But the point is, the oppressor is not going to bring about that change. We have to bring about that change.
Exactly.
See? Because he had his plan, and he implemented his plan, and he is not going to stop his plan because of some human feelings he has for us. He has no human feelings whatsoever, as far as I'm concerned, towards us, except exploiting and abusing us for his benefit. So we have to bring about that change by understanding ourselves and understanding our uniqueness and understanding our immediate environment.
Yes. Very well said, an eloquent comment.
I hope so.
Yes. Very important question for all of you gentlemen, and for myself as well. How important do you feel media control is, or at least media participation, to and for Afro-Americans? How important is the media?
I think that the media plays a very important role. It determines what you think, how you react, what you do. It determines your discussion. For instance, the recent difficulty they had with the Challenger, the explosion, that disaster that lost the lives of 7 people. It was forced upon the people to discuss it. It was shown for days. The disaster was so forced into your mind that you couldn't react differently. You had to react to that. You had to make a comment. So that's how important it is. It also shows the negative sides of stories and only let you focus on that in terms of in fact, before they give a direct overview of the whole story, just show your part.
Are you saying that the media shapes opinions?
Yes, it does. It misleads the people.
Masses of people. So would you feel that if we were better represented in the media, Africans, do you think things would be in any way different?
Oh, yeah, very much different. We'll be able to tell our own story. We'll be able to let our people react to that, what they have.
I want to take a different view there too. Naturally, if anybody is well represented in anything, you're going to be looked upon as a good person. You're going to be looked upon as whatever you are represented as. Be it in the media, be it in a book. If I take a book and read about you, and the book says you are a hustler or you are a preacher or I'm going to take, in my mind, that's what's going to register, right? I think the question with media, as much important and significant role it plays, especially in America, in shaping people's lives. With regards to African Americans, I think that it's important for us to understand that we are not going to be the ones to change how the media operates. By that I mean the media is established by a particular race for a particular purpose. Right?
Well, yeah.
Continue.
Secondly, the media is controlled by a particular race for a particular purpose.
At the moment.
Okay, we might have hopes that in the near future we'll have somebody black running ABC, even though I don't foresee that. I hope it does, it happens that way. But I think in order for a significant change to happen through media, goes back to us again. We have to establish us.
Yes.
We have to establish our own media. Again, we have the resources to establish our own media.
Yes.
If we can take 5 of these football players, just 5 of them, and combine their salaries, right there you have one black independent television station. If you take 5 more of the entertainers, you have another Motown.
Yes.
If you have 5 more of them, you have another Ebony magazine publishing company.
Yes.
You know?
So
it goes back to that.
I agree.
As far as I'm concerned, we have to forget, it's trying to assimilate. We have to start establishing our own selves, our own institutions, our own media, so we can interpret us, because nobody white is going to interpret you the way you want to. You can't even interpret the white person the way they want. They will not be satisfied by you interpreting them. So what makes you think you'll be satisfied by them interpreting you?
Exactly. This is what we mean when we mention media participation. This is not to own an ABC or be a president of ABC or NBC or CBS. It is to develop a network of our own.
Definitely.
This is the direction that many of us are thinking in.
I hope so.
Develop a network.
And I think as far as media is concerned, that's just about the only alternative we have.
The other alternative would be to stop watching the other Netflix.
Definitely.
Because the
Well, you
programming
see,
is too
once we establish a 24-hour black network, there's no need for you to watch The Odd Couple or
Exactly.
one of those silly things, you know?
Exactly, the nonsense that we see
Yeah.
on television. Any comment on the media, Mr. Akbar?
The media is a very powerful tool of education, and we have seen the programs, the content. But I would like to make a clear distinction that the technology of television, films, videotape, like the one we're doing now, for example, these things can be used for positive purposes, and we must understand that the technology itself is, there's nothing wrong with it. It's the way we use it. So I think that the media has to be restructured in its content, in its programming for positive purposes in the black community.
Yes. A very necessary thing, I might add. Gentlemen, I'd like to ask you a question. Once you observed America and you've experienced African Americans and Americans of all nationalities, do you plan to return to your homelands at all? Do you plan to return to the place of your birth?
I have plans to return back home as a base of working my programs and my objectives. It doesn't mean that I will be confined there, but you have to have some central location where you will set up your working programs. And I choose to return back home because that's my turf, and I know that area, and I can relate very well with the people there. But it doesn't mean by any way that I'll be confined to that geographical location. No.
I do intend to return to my home because I think I have a significant amount of development to do in terms of communicating with the people and contribute whatever I can to their development. So in terms of that, yes, I do intend to return and put all my resources, most of it, if not most of it, back.
Home. Okay. A very interesting word, definitely I will one day, sooner or later, land in South Africa because it is my place of birth, my geographical place of birth. I belong there. I will be there. I definitely will be returning. However, I tend to look at myself as an international citizen. I believe I'm a citizen of this planet Earth, so I therefore belong anywhere.
Yes, we all are home wherever we are.
And I hope, again, that we as a people, African Americans, or African Asians, African Egyptians, or whatever, I hope that we begin to have an international perspective of things, because that's how our oppressor operates.
Yes.
See? This is an international man we are talking about. He knows what's going on in China. He knows what's going on in South Africa. He knows what's going on in what? He knows what's going on in Guyana. He's an international man. If he wants to go live in China for 2 days, all he got to do is take a plane and fly there. Even though we all naturally have our individual bases as homes, I think especially for the African American in America, have to develop that attitude that I'm an international person. So therefore I intend to go home, and I intend to take a few of us home with me.
Yes. Yes. Would you, if you go home, you plan to return to the United States on a regular basis to touch bases with the brothers here?
Definitely. Yeah, I intend to, hope, I will be able to contribute in this development in this international Pan-African community.
Yes.
Because I've come to the conclusion that this is the whole thing that our oppressor never wanted. They've never dreamed that one day Africans like you and me will be sitting like this discussing, because that is the number one principle of divide and conquer, is never let these Africans sit down together and talk about anything. Basketball, politics, this is the whole thing. That is their primary objective, So it pleases me to be able to sit around my people like this, and without having any fears that I'm from South Africa, I'm inferior maybe to this brother because he's from America, and but this is the whole trick, This is what they always wanted, never to sit us together like this.
Right, so this video and our congregating together has been a positive step to show that we're all one. We're just brothers, universal citizens on this planet. And as you eloquently stated, it will be this knowledge and perspective of where we fit into the big picture that will liberate black people throughout the world. I think everyone at this table is in one accord with that particular concept. And we hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as I've enjoyed sitting here. These brothers are very eloquent, they're well-spoken, well-educated, and it's been a pleasure for me to know them, and I will continue to communicate with these brothers throughout my life when they go their separate ways. We here in America we're very isolated from our brothers from around the world, and I think this is the beginning of a new age, a new time where all of the Africans from around the world will unite for one purpose, under one God, for each other. So without any further ado, I'd like to bid you fellas a good afternoon.
No conclusions? No conclusion statement?
Yes, I think, excuse me, we'd like to have some concluding statements from the brothers.
Okay, my concluding statement will be 4 ideas on how to develop the black community. And that is 1, constructive communication and conversation. That is to communicate with the people who have the resources and people who can be resourceful in contributing whatever they can to the black community. The second is to take those resources and put it into constructive activity, to start building schools, educational facilities that you can teach children about their culture, what they should be. Third is to redirect that energy that's within the black community into something constructive, to tap that resource that they have and to channel it into the right direction, into the development of their communities. And fourth is to build an alliance with other people, with other cultures, and to expand your horizon. That's my four contributions.
Within the past 3-4 years, I've observed and learned a lot from a very honorable brother, Reverend Jesse Jackson. And one thing that has always rang in my mind is something that he always said: our time has come. I think that is a very significant statement for us as African people, as black people, if so to speak, to realize that this is our time.
Yes.
And by that I mean that it is a time for us to redirect our energies, as we have all said, reconstruct ourselves, and recreate our history. More importantly, however, I think our time has come for us to start recognizing and giving respect and honor to our leaders, those past and present. And by doing that, we'll begin to consciously and physically identify with who we are, what we are about, where we are, and where we are headed. And I feel very honored to have been a part of this discussion, and I feel more especially honored to have known and met these brothers, because it has helped me develop my own self and my own perspective of the world and my people throughout the world. For that, I thank you, brothers, very much.
Again, I also agree with this brother. It's a blessing that we've been able to meet brothers from around the world, from places other than where we are from. To know that we are not totally unique. To know that we are one within a family. As I mentioned earlier, we could all be genetic brothers. You as a viewer wouldn't know the difference because we're all soul brothers. We're black men in the world. And I think this thing was very important because it demonstrates that we are one. The concept of one has been something that our brothers and sisters have been separated from. We've always been fragmented, segmented, segregated, divided, at each other's throats, at odds all the time. The concept of one has never been prevalent with our people. There has always been separation. But with this discussion, we've demonstrated that oneness can occur among our people. And as Brother Meraki said earlier, once Africans unite around the world, it's all over. At least the oppression is over. The oppression is over. And those who would wish to continue oppression will fall by the wayside, because God is greater than that. If you cannot oppress a people who believe in a force much greater than man, who believe in the oneness of humanity, the oneness of mankind. You cannot destroy a force like that, and if you do, you will be destroyed in your efforts. So this discussion demonstrates that we can have an alliance among human beings, among Africans, and that we are no different. We are universal brothers, citizens of the world.
Yes, in my conclusion, I can only speak in full support of what my brothers have said. But I would like to exalt and give admonition to all my brothers who will be looking at this videotape, that the efforts to work together as one have always been the cornerstone of society. History bears witness to this. But we have to go deep within ourselves to find that out. And briefly, I would like to say that all we need to do is to examine our physical body and the physical organs in our body. And we will see the unity, the uniformity of the functions in our body. We need only to look in the physical environment, what we call air, space, galaxy, etc. And we will see the uniformity in those things. And that is what we need to do as a people, and as human beings on this earth. And with that point, I would like to say, thank you all very much. Peace be with you.
Peace. Big again.
Thank you.